Okay, welcome everyone. Brian and I and Anusha uh, extend our welcome from the database team. We're all product managers. One of the best parts of our job is we get to work with people in the community and customers. And I recognize a lot of names here. Most of them I like. A few of you, you're okay. Nah, I love everybody. We're all good. These are fairly laid back. Yes, it'll be recorded. The slides won't be available today because there really aren't any slides. I think I have one real slide, and we're going to do a good bit of show and tell, both things that we've released over the last year, not all of it, because that would be longer than an hour. And I would really like to talk a little bit about what we're working on this year. Your feedback, you can well, what can you do? There's the chat mechanism in Zoom. You can send your questions over there and we'll try to go through those. Sometimes at the end, I like to end the recording early and let people unmute themselves if they want to ask us questions. Brian, can you add an invite to the Discord channel in the chat? We have an informal Discord channel with about 300 people to hang out over there if you want to interact with Brian, myself, and sometimes Chris, when he's trying to escape his day job, he'll come hang out with us over there. All right, so let's get into it. We are responsible for these products you see on the screen. So we've got SQL Developer, Data Modeler, Oracle REST Data Services, SQLcl, SQL Developer Web. That's not all. We've also got some first class Oracle Cloud Services. Brian's going to take us through all of the ins and outs of that. So if you're an Oracle Cloud customer and you're using an Oracle database in our cloud, this can be very useful for you. So let's talk about what we've done in the last year. So we spend a lot of time doing outreach. Too much time, if you ask me. It's killing me. I need to go see a psychologist, I think, for help. Between Twitter and Stack Overflow and Instagram and gosh, everywhere else. If you're looking for us and you can't find us, you're doing something wrong. We've done several of these Ask Tom events. I like doing these. It's a good setup. If you folks have suggestions for things you'd like to have us do later this year, let us know. Oh, I hear the Discord beeps going, so people are joining the Discord channel, and that's cool. We generate a lot of content. We put it in a lot of different places. Really, our goal is to be where you are. So if you're spending a lot of time in the community or a tech space and you don't see us there, drop us a line. We'll come check it out. This might be the year we see the return of live events. I'm tentatively scheduled to appear at the East Coast Oracle Conference later this month in Raleigh. It just so happens I live in the Raleigh area, so I can pipe on over there and do some talks in front of real people. And I know there are user group conferences and events later this year that are going to try to do a hybrid approach. So we might actually get to go to some of those. In terms of what we did last year, we put out a whole lot of updates. I tried to count, I think it was like 37. I might be off one or two. So that's for all of the products that I showed on the previous screen, half of which are on a quarterly update basis. So, out of the box, we're going to have 4 updates for SQLcl every year. And then we do patch updates as necessary to address certain bugs if we need to. I would say on the release side, in terms of like things that really affect your day in and out, maybe the biggest most impactful change we made was for licensing on both ORDS and SQLcl. So it's no longer on the Oracle Tech Network or OTN license. It's now it's on the Oracle free license, which allows us to do a couple of cool things. One, you no longer have to sign in with an Oracle single sign-on account. You no longer have to agree to license terms. That means you can bookmark the download link and just always grab the latest update. So if you go to oracle.com/rest or oracle.com/SQLcl, on the download page, there's like a latest link that you can just permanently bookmark, and you'll always get the most up-to-date version. That also allows us to publish to public repos like the Oracle Yum repo. And also, if you're on a Mac, if you want to use Brew, you can the homebrew, you can use, say, brew install SQLcl or brew install ORDS, and it pulls that down for you. If you're building automated pipelines and you need these tools to make your stuff go out and be merry, then it makes it easier for you to integrate and pull those and use those as necessary. The day-to-day use on the free license, nothing's changed. You still have support from Oracle. As long as you are a Oracle database customer and you have a up-to-date support contract on that database, then you're more than welcome to file service requests on all of our products and get the same support you're used to expecting. The biggest otherwise product news or service news we had last year was the launch of the Database Tools Cloud service. This is a free service. Again, Brian's going to take you through it, but it's really to make your life easier as a database developer or a database consumer in the Oracle Cloud. You could have one system, you could have 50 of them. At the end of the day, you're going to be able to need to connect to those either ad hoc or programmatically with your apps, and you've got to manage credentials and wallets and passwords, and we've just built some nice tooling to give you a nice feel experience there. Our team is also responsible for the consoles that you see across the Oracle Cloud for any of the database services. So our team builds those web screens, and they're in process of doing some nice enhancements for the database cloud service console screens in general. Since we've built things for cloud, we try to integrate those with the desktop tools. We probably do that the most with SQLcl. That's going to extend over into ORDS later this year. We've had OCI or Oracle Cloud Integration support in SQLcl for quite a while. That's only going to get stronger. I think Brian's going to try to show this, but the latest thing is if you go and define some connections in our cloud, you can tell SQLcl to simply use those, and you can connect to any database you want. You don't have to tell us the service name, the IP address, your username, or even your password. We securely will connect up to that instance in your cloud tenancy just by knowing the resource name. Then we have our shiny new toy, SQL Developer Web, also known as Database Actions. Lots and lots of new features were deployed over in the last year. And if you want more details on any of this, you have our release notes. We've tried to publish videos and blog posts on all these topics. If you need help finding any of these, let me know. I'll send you over some links. The ones that I can't say enjoy the most because they're all my kids. I love all my kids. Maybe the ones of most note, the charts and dashboarding feature in SQL Developer Web is quite nice. So if you ever use the user defined reports in the desktop SQL Dev, we've kind of extended that over into the web interface as well. So you've got a query that's running, you want to turn that into a report, in this case, a series of charts, or maybe some grids and some charts. And dashboards allow you to group various things together. I'll demonstrate that in a moment. And this all back-ended by REST APIs. So we use the things that we build to build the features that you use. So we use ORDS to build ORDS. It's quite nice. So on top of that, just core database support has come to SQL Developer Web. Data Pump and DBMS Scheduler would be the biggest things there. Those will continue to be big projects for 2022, and I can give you all an update or a preview on that if you're interested. Over in the JSON universe, if you're using Oracle database as a JSON document store, or if you're interested in migrating from Mongo over to Oracle, we give you a nice JSON developer interface in SQL Developer Web. So instead of writing SQL, you can interact with your JSON documents with filters and insert and update and delete documents, and even get nice diagrams showing you your JSON schema structure. And then this is my favorite thing that we build, SQLcl. We've done quite a nice bit of stuff in SQLcl over the last year. I'm going to demo that first right after this slide, but native support for VI and Emacs for editing, syntax highlighting, status bar. We've entered a new command in the lexicon, data pump. And if you're using Liquibase, we now support SQL-based change logs. This isn't even close to everything we did in the last year. This is just a slide I threw together in a couple minutes, highlighting some of the biggies. We remain and will always be very customer and market driven. So if there are things that you need to do your job, that's why we do these chats, is to get that input directly from you. Or if you want to use your My Oracle support interface to submit enhancement requests, we do go through those and try to pick up the ones that fit into the existing roadmaps. All right, so just give me a second. I'm going to stop my share and switch over to SQLcl and give you a quick little tour of what we've done there. And then we're going to pivot over to Brian. I hope my font is big enough. Brian, is my font big enough? Can you see that okay?
I can see it quite well.
All right. He's good eyesight. So a few things on screen here. On the bottom, you have this new status bar. It shows things. By the way, this is off by default. You have to turn this on. So if you consider this eye candy that gets in the way or a distraction, don't worry about it. You'll never see it. And if you do want to use this, you'll use the status bar and the set status bar command to turn it on and to tweak it. So right now I can see I'm at cursor position 15 on line 1. And then everything else is like information about the connection that I have. Right now I'm not actually connected, but I am connected now. So I'm connected in as HR. Here's the instance I'm connected to. Here's the editor mode that I'm in, VI insert mode. If I were to run a query, it's reporting the execution time that was observed by the client for the last thing that I did. So here's a little bit of the syntax highlighting. This is actually completely customizable. I've tried to implement a command line version of this theme called Dracula. I don't know if it's like Gothic inspired, but it's very green and purple and black based. But you can tell us what color text you want to apply to keywords, to strings, to numbers, to dates, to identifiers. And that's just active. And what I do is I put my settings in my login script. And that login script also has my settings for the status bar. So if I say show status bar, here are all the different things that I can manipulate. So maybe I don't care about seeing certain things. I don't have to turn them on or off. And there's even an interface in here where you can add you can add your own things of interest to the status bar. Right now, it requires a little bit of JavaScript magic, and Chris Rice has a nice blog post to show you how to do that, but I'm hoping sometime later this year, we'll have a programmatic or feature-based entry point in SQLcl where you can add whatever you want to these status bars. What else do I want to do? Oh, data pump. There's a whole lot going on with data pump. So data pump is our PL SQL powered interface in the database that allows us to both load data and export data, not just data, but anything defined in the database. And there's already a data pump client that you can run. And of course you have the PL SQL API, but we figured, hey, a lot of people spend the majority of their time in something like SQL Developer or SQLcl. And while Data Pump has a ton of parameters and flags, there are certain ones that are the most common. Would it be useful if we built support for that into SQLcl? So as of today, you can do exports, you can do imports, you can do exports and tell SQLcl to grab those dump files off your database server and immediately copy them up to your Oracle object store, and then connect up into your cloud instance and do an import if you'd like. So we have a lot of support in here for interacting with the Oracle object store to do that sort of flipping the dump files around. And we spent some time on examples. So let's see. Help. Yeah. So if you just type data pump help examples, and also we try to save you keystrokes whenever possible. So you can type out data pump if you want, but you can also just say DP. If I say help and examples, this just prints the example text. So the different scenarios. Yes, you can remap schemas. Yes, you can set parallelization. Here's how to do the, bringing the files in and out of the cloud buckets. This is all covered in the documentation as well. There is a doc guide for SQLcl. And Brian, I'm going to share one more thing since we're talking about data pump. So when you start creating those jobs and running them, so I'm showing SQL Developer Web and Autonomous, but this would be the same SQL Developer Web you see wherever you're running ORDS. We have both a scheduling and a data pump screen here. So scheduling, this is brand new as of last night for Autonomous, although this was released in December for everyone. And if I come into data pump, I can see jobs that I've previously ran. If a job is running right now, I can tail the log. And I can also download the dump files if I'd like. So what we're working on in terms of data pump for SQL Developer Web is we're going to have wizards for kicking off the export and import tasks, just like you have in the desktop. And then the thing that's brand new for Autonomous and pretty much brand new for SQL Developer Web in general is this scheduling interface. So DBMS Scheduler, it's what you use to say, hey, every second Tuesday of the month at 10:05 in the morning, unless it's a holiday, banker's hours, I want you to run this stored procedure, or I want you to run the SQL Plus script, and then there are logs attached to those. So we've got a nice reporting interface for scheduler right now. You can see, first of all, has anything run into issues? And if not, we'll just show you every job, but you can easily say, hey, just show me my jobs. And obviously what we show you here is going to be based on your level of access to the data dictionary. So I've been messing around with some of the data tools features in Autonomous around analytic views. I can see this job's ran 22,000 times. If I want to get a little bit more insight on that, I can click the action button here and pull up a history, either a report or a chart. I can say the chart. It's thinking. Here we go. And I can zoom in on a window if I want. For some reason on this iteration, it took, I think, 6 milliseconds of CPU or 6 seconds of CPU. I can also toggle over to just a plain chart, or sorry, a plain report, and get much more information out, like the logs and the output of the jobs and pretty much anything you'd want to see. I mostly want to see, why did my job fail? Probably because I did something dumb. So I can also toggle to single record view, which is what I'll do a lot of times on these big fat reports after I've already put in a filter. One of the things we see around scheduling is you want to know when something's taken longer than it should have. So you can actually do this as a filter. So I could say, hey, only show me jobs that ran 5 minutes after they were supposed to. I don't think I have any. Yeah, everything ran at least within 5 minute window when it was scheduled to run. I have a complete overview of this scheduling feature on my blog. And what we're working on right now, our screen. Oh, let me show one more thing, not to end the party prematurely. The other cool thing we have is for chains. I don't have any chains. So we can visualize scheduler chains, and chains just allow you to take multiple components of the scheduler and basically chain them together, get them to run in parallel degree steps. So you can report on those, see the properties of individual items, and we have a nice visualization feature for that. That you can go to my blog and get the overview on. And so I think in March, late March, we'll publish an update where you can actually build these things using our standard create and edit dialogues. All right, Brian, I've talked enough. I'm going to turn my camera off and let you have the desktop.
Yeah, can we, just a quick summary of some of that. Can you just explain, there were some questions, what's needed for any of that? What versions, what do I need a cloud? Do I need to use just autonomous? Do I need DBMS cloud? Do I need this, what versions of the database?
Great questions. So you need at least database version 11G R2, but to be honest, that's about as dead as we can make it. Support on 11G R2 is on its very last legs, but yes, our stuff will still run there. I think DBMS scheduler made its debut in 10G. Our tools don't support 10G, but anywhere you can connect to an Oracle database today should support the scheduling feature. Everything I showed you in SQLcl and in SQL Developer Web can run in cloud or out of cloud. So we generally used to say cloud and on premises. Wherever the tools are running and connecting to an Oracle database somewhere, it could be in someone else's cloud, it's supported. The biggest kind of blocker would be your privilege level in the database you're connected to. So obviously you need execute privileges on DBMS data pump and DBMS scheduler, and then you need a certain level of data dictionary access to hit the views to generate those reports. And in SQLcl, anyone with the connect privilege can start coming in, running queries and using the status bar and syntax highlighting. For the versions, like I said, we did all of that in the last year. So for the scheduler support, you need ORDS 21.4, or you can go into Oracle Cloud into your autonomous instance. The data pump feature came a little bit earlier than that. I think that's in ORDS 21.3. The status bar, the VI, the Emacs, the syntax highlighting, that all came in SQLcl 21.2, which I think was released in June. I do have one more big release thing to say, and it's important. SQL Developer Desktop does ship the log4j jar. You may have heard about that just a little bit. So we've patched SQL Developer 3 times to address log4j vulnerabilities. The latest and greatest is 21.4.2. That was released about 10 days ago. So that has the latest version of that log4j jar, and it's got like 10 critical bug fixes that we found from the communities. Basically, people said, hey, I downloaded the latest version and I ran into these issues. If anyone's seeing queries running longer than they should, definitely get off 21.4.0 or 21.4.1 and get up to 21.4.2. That's a really nasty bug. We got that fixed. And if people across your orgs are shoving version 21.4.2 of SQL Dev across the desktops, and you've got questions about that, I've got a blog post that talks about the log4j stuff. And to be quite honest, SQL Developer doesn't even use that log4j jar. It's in there because of a third-party dependency. You can basically delete that thing out of the live directory and SQL Developer will run just fine. So can I stop talking now, Brian?
It's up to you.
Yes, I choose to stop talking.
All right. So I'm going to talk about the database tool service in OCI, which we launched back in November, I believe, of last year, of 2021. Now, this is going to be maybe a 15-minute overview. We still have a few more things to show, 10-minute overview, but we are working on a very large article / blog post / guide that should be released probably in the next week or so, and that'll be done. Before we get into tool service, just a quick note that we added a little article on this, I think a couple days ago on Monday. This was launched on Monday or Tuesday, but we do have these new dashboards in OCI, and this would allow you to monitor and see what's going on with your databases or your ORDS compute instances or whatever you really need in OCI in a single dashboard. And the great thing about this dashboard is you can have little tiles that monitor databases and your ORDS instances that are running on compute across regions, across compartments, compartments. So you can kind of get a nice kind of fleet management overview of what's going on with particular databases that are important to you. And here we've also added logging. So we're logging on our ORDS instance, and we can see the logs in here every time somebody accesses it or something happens, they get logged and they get put into the OCI logs. And then I could look at it with the log searching utility that we have in OCI as well. So those are all collected on that compute instances and sent over into OCI. And then I could set alerts or look at certain things, or actually on any of these metrics here, I can set alerts and look at specific metrics and have events fire if certain things happen. And this is looking at a database that's running on a virtual machine database. It's just a VMDB. I think it's a 19C database, and then an ORDS instance running on a single AMD processor with 16 gigs of memory or something like that. And that's kind of showing you what's going on here. So just a quick talk about that. So this is a cool feature that we have, and all you need to do is once you land in OCI, you hit this dashboard and things, and you start creating them, and they're pretty easy to create. So what's this database tool service? So the database tool service is a service, as I said, we launched last year, and it's kind of the foundation of where we're going in OCI with the database tools. And the start, we needed this, as I said, this foundation, this base, and that consists of creating database connections to your cloud databases in OCI. What's great about this is these connections are a top-level OCI resource, so they can be secured, they can be given out, and we can do a bunch of fun things with them. But one of the good things we have with the database tool service is that we kind of guide the user through creating this connection. There's no searching for connect strings or where my database lives or what compartment I'm in or what to do with it. And then once we gather all that information and you pick from an easy set of dropdowns which database you want to use, we'll go ahead and we'll take the password, or you can use a password that's already encrypted in a vault, or if you want, you can add a password and encrypt it in a vault. And we package it all up, and you're able to reuse these connections in other tools or straight from our SQL worksheet that we have directly here in the OCI console. So the best way to show you what this is to actually go through it. And so we'll create a connection. Easy thing is you name the connection, whatever you want to name it, and then you can choose your compartment. Now, what's nice here is that it gives you the selection of what kind of database. And there's an autonomous database, a database system, which is VM, maybe a bare metal database, or maybe the old model of Exadata, which I don't think are really used anymore. And then the VM cluster database, which is our Exadata cloud service. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at, let's say, the VM database. And what it's going to do, it's going to pre-fill this with, oh, you have 2 databases. Okay, well, I want this dev database here. And then it's going to find the database home. It's going to put the database, and then it's going to give me a selection of all the pluggable databases or PDBs that I have on that service. And I can select which one I want to go to. I can put a username in here. Oh, and I didn't do that. Let's go back. I could put a username in here. I can give it a role, sysdba or whatnot if I was connecting as a sys user. And then I can go ahead and add a password. So these are all passwords that we have access to from our vault. And you can go ahead, or if I said, like I said before, you can go ahead and create that password here. And then it just gives you you put your password in, you confirm it, it gets encrypted, it gets put in the vault, and it's used for the service. Now, this is something which is I don't want to say a problem or an issue, but what we have here is that a lot of times people deploy databases in subnets, private subnets that are completely isolated from the network. So what do we do here? So what we have is we have these private endpoints, and these private endpoints allow you to put this little adapter inside of a subnet where just the database tool service will use, and this has to be created by you or whoever has access to use this endpoint. This endpoint goes into the subnet, and then you're able to connect over that subnet or over that endpoint into that subnet to use that database. So we have a nice little picture here in our docs. So here we have you, the end user, and then we have the database tool service. Now, the database tool service is going to put that private endpoint within a subnet. It's given IP addresses within that subnet, and then only the database tool service is allowed to use that connection over into that private endpoint and then access databases that are in the customers into your subnet that are using private or public IP addresses. You can use any of the ranges, and then you could secure it even more by doing certain things. So let me show you real quick how we can do this. So here's a private endpoint we're using, and this private endpoint is going to go in a particular subnet. Now, the important thing here is that with this private endpoint, and I'll just bring up the database for that, we can attach this private endpoint with that IP address that it gets and secure it down with a network service group. So here we have a network service group that we've placed on this database. And you can see, if I go to this nodes, this database here only has a private IP address. So with the private endpoint for the database tool service and then securing it down with the database tools access network security group, I allow only the IP addresses from that endpoint to contact this database. So here we have the reverse lookups of that endpoint. We allow them to go over 1521 using this network security group. And then when we create our database connection, which is this private one right here, we're able to access it over that private endpoint. So very, very secure. It depends on, you can basically have access to these databases that are behind these secure private subnets directly from the tool service. So once you create this, and let me just show you really quick, we're going to jump over the autonomous. So the autonomous one's even easier. It's going to basically say, hey, choose your autonomous database, choose your secret. But what's nice about this, if you're using MTLS, we can go ahead and grab that wallet for you. So as you know, with an autonomous database, you need that wallet, those certificates, those secured credentials to talk to an autonomous database. We're actually going to go and get that for you, secure it and encrypt it in that OCI vault. And then when we connect to it, we use that wallet connection. We use that wallet and the password that are secured and encrypted in the vault to connect directly into it without you having to remember. So the great thing about this is you can create these connections for use from other people, other teams and whatnot, and allow them to connect into these databases without having to remember connect strings, without having to remember passwords, without having to download wallets. The other cool thing is, since this is a top level OCI resource, I can go ahead and say, all right, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to put some policies on this. And I'm going to say that, and I'll show you a sample policy here, that, and I think this is my awesome naming convention. Yes, this is an awesome naming convention, that I want to say that we have a group called analysts, and I want to put particular people inside this group, this analytics group, and they're going to have access to a particular compartment. But I only want these people in the analytics group to only have access to this particular database connection, service connection, lack of a better word. So when they go into their UI and when they log in, they're only going to see this compartment, and they're only going to have access to view and use this particular connection. So we can really get down to the very granular level, since these database tool connections are a top level OCI resource, which is very, very important for securing these down. All right, so now that we have them and we have them secured, what can we do with them? So the first thing is, let's go to my connection here. And this is a connection that we have. This is an autonomous database. And we can jump to the SQL worksheet, which we'll get to in a second, but we can also launch SQLcl directly from the Cloud Shell. So the Cloud Shell has SQLcl installed by default, and here's a little Cloud Shell up here. But if I want to connect to this service right here, all I have to do is hit this launch SQLcl button. And what it's going to do is it's going to start up my my Cloud Shell. It's going to go ahead, set this up. It's going to use the connection details and log me directly into this database directly from SQLcl using the Cloud Shell. So if I'm someone who loves, SQLcl, which you should, and you love working in it, I can go ahead and I can start working with this connection right away. So typical SQLcl, here's my tables, if I spelled it right. And I can start working with this set status. And there's my status bar. And I could do all the fun things that you saw Jeff do with SQLcl. The other cool thing about this is if my connection is a private connection. So here's a private connection, aptly named Private Autonomous Database Connection. When I hit this launch SQLcl, it's going to say, hey, I see that this is a private connection. Can I use a bastion? And here we have a bastion called Sebastian, aptly named. And I say, okay, I want you to use this bastion. I hit the launch button. And what it's going to do is, with Cloud Shell, it's going to set up a SSH session and tunnel me over into my subnet, where I can now access that database over that SSH tunnel for me. I don't have to do anything. You can see on the bottom, it's getting all the wallets. It's going to set this up while we work here. And then it's going to create that session, log me in over that session, and then allow me to start using that database directly in there. So you can see it's a great service to use these cloud databases, whether they're in private or public subnets, and then you put security on those particular connections that we have here. So very, very important that we can secure down. Once this tunnel is connected, it's going to log me in directly over it, and now it's going to drop me down to a prompt, just as we saw before. So select star from the $sign database, if that table is available. There we go. You can see I'm connected into that database directly over that bastion that created that secure tunnel for me. So, and this right here, this is a particular autonomous database that is using that has private IP. So again, over here, if I look at this autonomous database here, you'll see that it is using a private IP address. So here's my private endpoint, and it is not a public autonomous database. So again, I use that bastion service, tunneled over it using that private endpoint that we have in the database tool service to create that SQL or that SSH tunnel, logging over that SSH tunnel with SQLcl directly into that database, all from a single button that was on the page. So very, very cool feature there.
Hey,
now
quick
let's
question,
talk about,
Brian.
go ahead.
One of your favorite things, that question about support for XSCC VM clusters. Can we create connections for those?
Yep, XSCC is an on-premise thing right now. Yes, you create it through OCI and everything, but the tricky part of that is connection from OCI to the XSCC. If you had your XSCC set up with a fast connect or a VNC and were able to tunnel over that back over to on-premises where that XSCC lives, then yes, you could do everything you can do here, but we don't claim support for it with these tools quite yet because there are a lot of hoops to jump through to get to XSCC. It's just a little bit more.
That was a long way of saying
advanced.
kind of, not really, but
yeah, not really.
Maybe. Yeah.
All right. So now it brings us to the SQL worksheet. Once I have these connections, I can use them in the SQL worksheet. So imagine, again, we have those secure connections and only I can use. They're going to show up and allow me to use them from here. So what's nice is I can use these connections and I could switch between any database I have access to directly by just using this dropdown and change my connection. So I'm working on this database now. So, again, we can, in the SQL worksheet, we can use SQLcl type command. So here are my tables. I run this and it's going to show me all the tables I have here. Oh, well, I want to see all the tables I have in this particular one called the public database. Oh, well, okay. I change that and I hit the run again and it's going to say, oh, well, I've run again. So you have all these. Oh, well, I want to see what I have in my private autonomous database. It's going to use that connection and it's going to go over there, and I don't have any tables in this one. So I can easily jump from database connection to database connection just by using this dropdown, which is really, really cool. Okay, so now that I have that and I want to access my database, what can I do? Well, I can start by loading in a script. So I can load scripts from Object Store, or I can load them from my local desktop. So I hit load Object Store. I'm going to choose a bucket. So let's say lab files. And let's see, I have 2 scripts in here. So we'll just grab this one and I'm going to hit load. And there we go. I have my query loaded. I can immediately run it directly from here. Oh, and here's my answer, or here's my result. Very, very cool. I can load these in. You can convert case. So if I wanted this all lowercase, I just hit that and it's lowercase, uppercase, what have you. Now, another fun thing here is that I can use the code insight. So we're going to set this to customer C. And then if I go here, I can go C, and it's going to say, hey, what's in my customers? Oh, well, you have customer ID, email, and full name. Okay, so I'm going to pick full name. And then let's say I wanted to hook this to my orders table. So again, using the code insight, okay, orders table, and we'll call this O. And then I can do O dot, oh, well, these are the columns. Well, let's say order date. And then O dot, what am I else? Order status from orders. And then what's cool is it's going to give me some suggestions on the where clauses. And it knows that these are foreign key related. So I'm just going to click this one and it's going to give me that. And I'm going to hit run and it's going to run this. And here is my result. And if I like this result, I want to share it out. I can share, this particular thing, or I can download it in any one of these 4 formats. So CSV, JSON, XML, or just a straight text file. And I could save these off to it. And then, hey, you know what? I like this particular query. I'm going to save this query to my object store. I'm going to call it query 22. I'm going to put it in this bucket, save, and now I've saved off that query. Now, anyone who has access to that particular bucket, I can use this query or grab that query from there. So you can see that it's a very, very powerful feature that we have for connecting to these databases. And again, we're creating this foundation to launch off into other things. Another example of using this is in CI/CD pipelines. So here we have a development pipe or deployment pipeline within OCI DevOps. So here's a deployment pipeline. We have this deployment pipeline. And let's say this deployment pipeline is saying deploying to our dev or UAT or to our production instance. Now I can use those policies and I can use dynamic groups using that instance that I'm deploying to and say, okay, only DevOps pipeline can use this particular database tools connection and can only use it on this particular database. And then what I do is within my deployment YAML file, and if you don't know YAML files, don't worry about this. You'll see what it looks like, when we bring this up. What I can do directly in my deployment file, descriptor file, is I can say, okay, I don't want usernames and passwords in my log files for DevOps. I want to just allow it to connect into it. So what I can do is, while this loads, and I'll just jump over here and show you a better example of this. I can use SQLcl. So SQL no log. I can set my OCI profile, and I can log directly in to a database just using the OCID from Database Tools Service. So here's an OCID. I hit return. It's going to do everything it needs to do. It's going to get the password, get the connect information, get any wallets I need, get the username, get all that stuff, log me directly in with a single OCID. So again, I don't have to remember passwords. I don't have to remember connect strings. All I have to do is remember this OCID. And we're going to make this even easier where you use connection name rather than OCID, because this is a little bit much to remember. But let's say, this password, password
Well, we'll make it even easier than that.
expires.
You can ask for a list of your databases and we'll just show them to you. And then you can say, oh, I want that one.
Yep, exactly. So you can see it's just very easy to do, to just go in there and look at and directly connect into that database. And let me just jump back over to
10-minute warning, my friend.
Oh yeah, you still need to show one more thing. Okay, so basically
That's
one
all good.
last thing is once this loads, let me bring up this file. I don't know why it's being slow. So here it is right here, this config file. So you see right here, what we do is we basically connect directly into this database using a connect script or a database tool service resource ID or OCID. So again, in this deployment in the logs, there's no passwords, there's no usernames, there's nothing. It's just a connection OCID that only this running service can use. So very secure at that. All right, now back over to Jeff, because we're going to show some things with charts and dashboards.
Theoretically. So, what happened to my chart here? I must have broke something. This is actually a live chart, a live dashboard pulling data from all kinds of different tables that I have in my cloud database, but this could be running in any Oracle database. You have ORDS going in. And if I don't want to look at these numbers, I can switch to a grid view and have this be a little bit easier to read. And the idea is you're looking at data all day, you're running ad hoc queries all day. Yeah, you can look at the raw results, but sometimes you do want to visualize things. So we make it easy for you to basically define those visualizations based on your SQL queries. So here I've got a query saying, hey, let's do a count, group on activity type. And I'm looking for at least an activity that has at least 5 things. And I'm saying, let's order that by the count. Once I have at least 2 columns in my query for the chart, we'll try to visualize it for you automatically. And then you can come over here and override things if you want. So I could say an area chart, polar, preview that. I hate this chart type. I don't know why you would ever use it, but it is in there. Oops. And you can add labels. And with security properly in place, it's pretty easy for you to share these charts, individual charts or dashboards, which are collections of charts. So edit this one. This one wasn't pulling up before. Strava activity type. Oh, there it is. Now it's pulling up. So these are things that we've already done. Let's talk about what we're going to be doing for the rest of the year. Um, I can't go too much into detail on these things because I'll get in trouble. But what I do feel comfortable telling you, I will gladly tell you. The biggest thing is SQL Developer Desktop is going to be modernized. We're building a brand new SQL Developer desktop application. And it's going to have all the features that you like, all of the new stuff we've been doing in SQL Developer Web for the last 4 years. Um, can I tell you when it's coming or what features it'll have and not have? Nope, can't tell you any of those things, but we're working on it. It's on our priority list. We're going to get started on it this year. And for some unforeseen amount of time, there will be a mix of people using the old SQL Dev, the new one, and of course, there's always the command line and web interfaces you can continue to use. So people are putting in enhancement requests in SQL Developer Desktop, and they're not going to go very far because right now we're pretty much doing bug fixes and just minor feature updates as necessary for the database. All of the new development has been going into SQL Developer Web, and that work there will pivot nicely into the desktop application that we're building from the ground up. So I'm very excited about that. I'll be able to address some things that people haven't liked about the old desktop tools. We might be able to build support for things like in-place upgrades, like modern apps work, like check for updates actually pulls down the updates and updates it for you there live on the fly. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's one of the things we're looking at to try to make happen. What else do we have going on this year? SQLcl, we continue to have tons of new features that we want to put there. We recognize some people prefer mouse, some people prefer keyboard, and for the keyboard warriors, we want to have SQLcl be the best experience possible for Oracle database. So the data pump command there will get enhanced some more. We're going to try to build more Oracle Cloud native support into SQLcl. Like, for example, this ability to get a list of your databases in the cloud. We should have a command there that takes that list of databases and automatically builds for you a TNS names file. Spool as old as the hills. It's probably almost as old as Brian and I. Running queries and getting the results out to a file, we should be able to spool files directly to an object store bucket. So we're going to be doing that kind of stuff. SQL Developer Web, the biggest features we've got working on right now. We're building a really nice search feature. So you can say, hey, help me find a table called X and then open it for me automatically, or search into your source code and open that. So a better navigation of your database. A first-class PL/SQL interactive or integrated development environment. So compile, see error, click error, fix error, that kind of stuff. That's going to bring in support for opening and saving files in SQL Developer Web, which, believe it or not, is not there today. And that worksheet that Brian was showing with the Insight feature in the Cloud Console, that's all going to get replaced this year with SQL Developer Web. So I wouldn't say replaced, enhanced. So we want to have the SQL Developer Web experience available to you in the native Oracle Cloud Console for any Oracle database in the Oracle Cloud. Right now, it's available just for Autonomous, and you go in and you work with one database at a time. With the database tools service, we want to have SQL Developer Web there that can connect to any Oracle database across your entire cloud infrastructure. So that's not even half of what we're working on. If anyone ever works with MySQL, we're doing work to extend ORDS and SQL Developer Web to the MySQL universe. That'll be cool.
Yeah, database tool service may actually
Yeah.
join that game as well for the MySQL.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of exciting things going around. I don't think it's a surprise or anything if you follow any of us or Chris or any of our developers. There's been some MySQL hints dropped every now and then.